So hello, everybody. I'm Jackson Mueller. I'm a PhD student at UNR, and I have been working in Nevada as an archaeologist since I did my field school back in 2008. And so traditionally, I did a lot of historical archaeology, and this is a kind of a project that I really enjoyed putting together, stemming from one of the contract jobs that we did a number of years ago. I was working for WCRM. That was a cultural resource management firm that did work for the Robinson mine out in Ely from the 1990s into the early 2000s. And as part of one of the projects we did, we would record historic mines and document them and do a lot of research before they were destroyed by mining expansion. And this includes, among other tasks, mapping all the features and discussing them in terms of their role in the history of the site. Now, unfortunately for a lot of archaeologists, mining features frequently don't have anything that tells you what they are or how old they are. They don't have any functionally or temporally diagnostic characteristics that allows us to really tell what time frame that they were made, when they were used, and that sort of thing. And so what we do in that case is, at least we try to do, is we go and we look at the mineral survey data. The mineral surveys are they're part of the process of the patenting of a mining claim. And they not only depict the boundary of a mining site or a mining claim, they depict features that are present at the time it goes to patent. And so this presentation is really a discussion about how we use those documentary records to explore the history of a mining site at that specific time. And that allows us to tell exactly who, what, when, and where these features were created. So the Robinson Mining District is the one that we did as part of this project. And if you've ever been on Highway 50 and driven out to Utah, Ely is the last place you can get gas before you hit the state line. And the Robinson District is really the primary economic driver for development in Ely itself, along with ranching. This is what it looks like. It's about 6 miles by 12 miles. It's pretty big, and it was established in the 1860s actually, 1868, after some prospectors found gold and silver ore as part of the greater mining development trend at that period of time. But most of the mining took place after 1990. And this is when it became profitable to extract huge quantities of low-grade copper ore associated with these volcanic intrusions and really process them in bulk. Block and cave mining was the most common style prior to the 1950s, and at that point, that's when they shifted to open pit operations, which continue today. So if you go there right now and look out on the overlook, you're going to see a giant hole in the ground. Trend began in the 1950s. So these are the claims that are associated with this district, at least as of 1909. This is when a whole bunch of interest kind of rushed the area and started claiming different geographical areas and hoping to make their fortune in copper. And eventually, the trend in mining history is that over time, claims will get consolidated by bigger and bigger companies. So this is a very interesting period of time that we can look at in terms of who was there and who first started developing this land. And so you really need to go back and look at the documentary record for this early period in time. Now, the main places that you can get this information are the courthouse and the BLM's land records website. To a degree greater than just about any other state that I'm aware of, the county recorder's offices in Nevada hold detailed records that include basically the entire history of a claim. They tell you when and where it was located, which is kind of the staking of the claim itself, annual labor records, which are required to maintain your claim, and other info. Now, these records can vary in detail or completeness, ranging from really, really detailed locational information to incredibly frustratingly vague references to nearby landmarks and what they were doing at the time. Now, historically, when a claim is first staked or located, the information is not very precise. The most important thing on the ground is the physical monumentation of this itself, which is like a claim stake or a rock cairn, that sort of thing. Now, the IDA claim, which is what you're looking at here, this is the typical example of early claiming notice. It gives its position relative to other claims nearby, but it doesn't really reference any particular element of the landscape. And it would be very challenging to track this particular claim down just based on the location information. Now, if a mine claim is patented, that's the process of transferring it from public ownership, the general land office ownership, to private. You have to conduct a mineral survey and take it to patent. And this is a picture of a mineral survey that would typically be done for this sort of activity. Now, they have two components. They have the plat and they have the field notes. Plats are the maps that depict the claim boundaries and the distances and bearings to corners of the claim and other physical things on the landscape. And they also show you improvements, development that was made on those claims that is required to send the claim to patent. You have to invest a certain amount of money in this. You can't just transfer. You can't just stake it and say it's mine forever. These survey plats are based on field notes that are taken in the field by a surveyor. And those are the narrative description of the claim, and they're described in terms of metes and bounds. This is a very old style of describing land boundaries, and it describes positions in relation to a single point that is often referred to as the place of beginning. And so a typical claim description will read similar to the following. They'll say, beginning at corner number 1, bear south 39 degrees east for a distance of 6,034 feet to the next corner. And then you give a similar description, kind of like that. And eventually you trace a box and you end up at the place of beginning. And that's your property description. Improvements are described in the same way. You would start at a claim corner and you say, okay, so from this claim, go north 53 degrees east and go that direction for 55 feet and you'll find a mine shaft. That's, I think it's by law, the way that properties are described. Now, the easiest way to interpret this data, the plats and the field notes, is to take the plat, which is done for you essentially, and you georeference your plat to the section corners of a map that you've already got in your mapping system, like a USGS topo, for example. If you do that, you can sort of display the archaeological features that you've recorded in the field, and hopefully those will coincide with the documentary record. And this is a very visual strategy. It comes with a lot of inherent error and problems, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But there's another way, which is taking the field survey notes and following those very specific directions and returning the actual description of the claim to the place of beginning. It's a lot more precise, and it's a lot more useful when you're working in a mining district that's very crowded with development, with pits, prospects, claim posts, and that sort of thing. If you georeference a claim marker or a claim plat, and you get out there and you find 55 prospect pits nearby, it's very, very difficult to tell what you're looking at. If you can do that with any typical GIS, geographic information systems program. It's called coordinate geometry, and it's kind of the way that modern surveyors use to reconstruct, say, parcel boundaries today, in fact. So we recently did this at 2 mines on the periphery of the mining, or the Robinson district. One is the Rabbit Mine. It's a small operation that existed or operated from about 1897 into the 1950s. It's the arrow on the right, situated on the southeast edge of the district towards Ely. And the other is the Loco Mine. This was another small operation that we're not really sure how often or how long it operated, but we do have the mineral plat, and it's located over on the western edge of the district, by the left arrow on the screen. So we'll start with the Rabbit Mine. And the Rabbit Mine is an archaeological site. It includes a lot of mine shafts, waste rock dumps, claim monuments, those sorts of things. And the main action, though, is a small complex of mining features associated with the Rabbit and the Alpha claims. And these are both owned by a guy named Jack Welsh in 1907 when the claims were patented. That's the features on the southern end of the site that you can see right there. And this is what the survey plat for that particular mine looks like. We georeferenced it, which is the easiest way to kind of coordinate your maps with your archaeological data, using the BLM's geographic coordinate database. This is the township, range, and section information that's available online. And you can see it on the screen, kind of the blue marks, blue lines are the township, range, and section. Those points are listed in the plats. And so you can see in the top left corner a whole bunch of dashed lines coming from one of the survey corners. Well, those are the corners we need to tie in with the BLM's data. And so what we did is we georeferenced it, tied it into the online, the public data, and bam, you have a georeferenced mineral survey that you can sync up with your archaeological data. If you try and map or georeference your plat maps with straight up topo maps, you can run into some inconsistencies. It's best to start with the public land survey data. This is a typical topo map. It's the relevant one in this case. And you can see towards the top of the map, the blue line should, in an ideal world, link up and be exactly in line with the red topo map section marker. But that's not the case. There's a difference of about 100 feet, which is significant enough to cause some headaches when you're trying to tell what claim is associated with what feature. Now, in this case, the topo map is probably an error. The current BLM data probably comes from a surveyor going out and relocating the section monument after the topo map was made, and so it would be the most up-to-date information that we have. So after all that, we can relate we have a georeferenced plat, and we can relate the site's data that we recorded to the historical documentation. Now, amusingly, the majority of what we recorded as the Rabbit Mine is not actually on the Rabbit Mine claim. But nonetheless, if we zoom into the southern portion of the site where we recorded a few adits and waste rock dumps, we can see that the features that we identified align almost perfectly with the mineral survey from 1907. It was close enough. This sort of thing never happens. It almost brought me to tears. It was just so beautiful. You're never going to get that kind of accuracy ever again. So our other case study is the local mine, and this is a small operation. It's on the other side of the district. On the ground, it's a lot smaller than the Rabbit Mine. It's got a few prospect pits, claim monuments, big mine shaft, that sort of thing. Pretty typical mining, independent mining, just site. When the claim was surveyed for a patent in 1906, the workings consisted of a couple tunnels, discovery cut, and a mine shaft. And that's pretty much what we saw on the ground. And so when we first attempted to plot out the claim boundary in the way that we did the Rabbit Mine, we almost weren't even sure that we were dealing with a local mine at all. We were off by about 100 meters, and with the same method. But the lack of any other sorts of similar mining features within a quarter mile of this site, plus the way that they were relatively distributed, we were absolutely sure that we had to be on a local mine. We just didn't know how to sync up the data. And so we went back and we just had to recheck our reference points. And so this is the point where we go back to the place of beginning, the real world monument referenced in the mineral survey. And so just for fun, we went to the plat and we followed the directions. This is just, it's kind of like connect the dots, essentially. So you start at corner number 1 and you follow the directions to corner number 2. In this case, you go north 19 degrees, a little over 19 degrees east for 1,500 feet. And follow all of those directions and you retrace the claim boundaries. And so this is what it looks like in the real world. Here's the topo map that we got from the BLM and the public land survey information in blue. We started with the section corner, followed those directions, and we have our georeference claim. Now we've got the plat tied into the rest of the world, right? And not so fast. Here's the claim boundary in relation to our archaeological data. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but everything kind of matches up with itself, but we're still offset by about 130 feet. So the question is, why did this method and this process work for the Rabbit Mine, but not the local mine? Let's go back a step. The error, we think, lies in reference to the section corner. That's the one way down to the southeast. According to land surveyors I've worked with, the physical monumentation, the points on the ground are by law the corners and the things that you reference off of. They're stable points, and so they don't change if maps are updated. They don't change if satellites come in and make things a little bit more accurate. They're stable points that if we can find them, we can GPS them, tie that in with the mineral survey, and everything ideally will be groovy. So we went out to look for it, and lo and behold, we just weren't able to find that thing. And so what we did was we did what GIS professionals absolutely hate, which is eyeball it and call it good. And kind of concluded that what we recorded was actually what was on the plat map. Now, if you're working in a relatively undisturbed area, or if referenced section monuments are still intact, you can return to the mineral survey's place of beginning, and that's a reliable way to identify mining features from the survey and give it some historical context. And if possible, go find the section corners that are referenced in the claim itself. And these corners are sometimes easy for archaeologists like us to find, but they tend to look like a lot of other features on mining sites. If you're lucky, you're going to find the brass caps. Those are really, really good. But oftentimes, you're not going to be able to find those. They could be removed, they could be looted, or they could be referencing, the survey could be referencing posts or trees or things like that. And you may not even be looking for that in the first place. There are a lot of times there are offset markers. If you've ever seen a tree out in the wilderness with a kind of a yellow tag, it says section marker, do not cut down under some penalty. Those are usually offset markers. And so a surveyor will look for those trees and they'll realize, like, okay, from this tree, I need to go 15 feet in this particular direction. Those also get burned, and so a lot of times you're not going to find them. Rocks tend to hang out a little bit longer, so your mileage may vary on retracing these things, but if you can't even find those, sometimes you're forced to trace back markers, sometimes townships away. Everything is related to other datums in the vicinity. So in the case of a loco mine, we suspect that the actual surveyor who did this in 1906 probably didn't string tape from the section corner down south of Brieftown all the way to the corner of the claim. It's more than a mile away. And these guys had steel tape. It would take a pretty husky surveyor to yank it hard enough to get a line on that. It's more likely that he tied it to a claim marker nearby. And in a district like this, if you're lucky, you may be able to find that claim marker and tie that into an actual survey monument. Now, sometimes that's not going to work. Sometimes everything has been destroyed. But it's important to remember that if you do your homework and you trace these points of beginning back far enough, you can usually find a reliable reference point for just about any mineral survey and tie in a claim to a site that you've recorded. It's important to remember that the data from the BLM and the Public Land Survey System is not always accurate. Just because it's the most recent doesn't mean that it's based on a degree of accuracy. And you'll also find that the corners on USGS topo maps will vary in accuracy depending on how old they are, who did those, and what the terrain was like. So how is this useful? Depending on how your sites are defined in your project area, identifying these features with respect to the claims can allow for cleaner determinations of site boundaries that aren't just abstract clusters of site or features and artifacts within 30 meters of each other. Although they may be geographically near each other, they could be from entirely different mining operations, and trying to interpret that is really a fool's errand. It really all depends on the scope of what you're able to do before you do field work, and whether or not you can get this information before you actually go out and record sites. So hopefully by better understanding these processes, we are able to get a little bit closer to understanding the rules in which mines were established in the first place. So that's the perspective from a archaeologist who's done this countless of times. And if you find yourself out on a mining site like this, good luck.